Hi there. I am Gwen again, and this is the fourth video in my series Taking Off the Leash, which is introducing the Wild Woman Within 12-Month Circle that begins on September 1st. And today I am going to talk about reconnecting to ourself. And the first question really is, what the hell is the self, right? When we talk about connecting to ourself or reconnecting to ourself with a capital S, what do we mean? So the self is who we are, right? At our core. The self includes part of who we are at our core is also our ego, right? It includes the stories that we've been trained and taught with our entire lives from our culture. It That's all part of it. It's part of the bigger picture, right? Those would be the shadow aspects of ourself, our stories of too much, our stories of not enough, all the shame that's in there, the biases we were raised with, the internalized misogyny, right? All of that is part of who we are. We can't pretend that they're not. And those are considered to be when we talk about our shadow, that's those parts. They tend to be unconscious and and so they tend to be unconscious. I'll just leave that there. Um, and while those shadow aspects are definitely part of our self is also who we are when we strip all those stories away. So when we've healed our mother wounds or started the healing work of our mother wounds, when we connect to our intuition, when we connect to our body, when we connect to spirit, when we really dig into the core of who we are, when we've been able to process through and shed off those stories of how we're too much, how we're not enough, when we let go of shame, that is also ourself, right? There's feminine and masculine aspects, the shadow and light, the powerful and powerlessness, the strong and weak, right? All of these, sort of dual ideas that aren't really dual, right? They're very much continuum. So it's not either or, it's like we're both and they blend into each other depending on the day of the week and what we're dealing with that day. Um, all of that is ourself. So it is who we are when we shed off all these layers of what we've been taught and trained. And it includes all those layers of what we've been taught and trained. So when I personally talk about getting back to ourself, what I am talking about is connecting to those shadow pieces, learning about them, acknowledging them, understanding them, embracing them, processing them, accepting them, right? All of that. And getting to what's underneath all of that, who we really are. If we could let go of those stories of how we aren't enough, if we could let go of the striving to prove ourselves, if we could let go of the shame of how we're too much, we're too loud, we take up too much space, we're too opinionated, too female, we're too emotional, we're too sensitive, right? We could let go of all of that crap, right? All that shadow piece that we've been taught and trained about. That's who I want us to get to. That's what my work is about, is getting to that aspect of ourselves, that deeper knowing and understanding, a deeper awareness. I don't know if we ever fully let go of all those stories that we've been taught and trained, because we have been taught and trained them our entire lived experience. and they keep bombarding us even as we do this work, right? Our mothers were taught and trained in this work, right? Taught and trained in how we aren't enough, how we're too much, shame. Our grandmothers were, right? I mean, we have millennium of this uh, in us. So I don't know if we can ever get to the point where we aren't triggered at some point by something. And I know from my personal experience and from my professional experience working with women in this work is that you can and you do get to the point where it's not so life uh, altering that that one of these stories comes up. You more get to a place of, oh yeah, that's one of my too much stories, and you move on, right? Instead of buying into the story of, oh, I'm too much, I'm too loud, I need to shut up, I need to not, blah, 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 right? The work of the circle that I am going to be guiding starting in September is based on 4 books. It's based on The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. It's based on Women Who Run with Women Who Run. I always want to call it Women Who Dance with the Wolves, and I don't know why that is. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Dance of the Dissonant Daughter by Suma Kidd, and Leaving My Father's House by Marion Woodman. 3 of the 4 of those women are white women. 3 of the 4 of them are also Jungians. They are Jungian analysts. So Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Maureen Murdoch, and Marion Woodman all have Jungian backgrounds, and Maureen Murdoch, Marion Woodman, and Suma Kidd are all white women. So I mention that because I feel that it's important for me to acknowledge that the information that I'm drawing on is based on the culture that white women grow up in and are raised in, and to acknowledge that there is a different culture that women of color grow up in. Even, I mean, it's the same culture, but you have very different experiences of it depending on your heritage. The 12-month circle is based on those 4 books, and follows the wheel that Maureen Murdoch presents in The Heroine's Journey. And it's a circle that shows the stages of a woman's life. And there is separation from the mother is part of that, which is separation from, which also can be interpreted as separation with the feminine and alignment with the masculine. And then at some point in our mid 30s to early to mid 40s, women start to have this awareness, this yearning, this desire to get to know themselves. This can show up as loneliness. This can show up in starting to really see how our patriarchal culture is rigged against us. It is starting to see all the ways that we have been turned against our feminine selves and other women, including our mothers, including our sisters, including female friends and coworkers, right? It can be an awakening in seeing how, as white women, we have turned against women of color. It can show up in all kinds of ways. It can manifest as anxiety, extreme anxiety. It can manifest as a sense of hysteria, a sense of like just emotions out of control. It can manifest as deep depression. All of these are signs of how we are not connected to who we are. While the work that I draw on is written by and probably for white women, I have recognized this pattern in women of color also. It shows up a little differently, and it is an awareness of how fucked our culture is and how it is rigged against women, and how it's particularly rigged against women of color. And depending on the heritage of the woman of color, how it manifests within that particular heritage. So while this writing is by and probably for white women, I have seen how that circle that Maureen Murdoch writes about, that cycle, and it's a lifelong cycle, like, and we keep going through it, and we are actually at several points in it, at any given point in our lives, right? We aren't only in this one space. We're in, at varying levels, we're in different spaces all at once. So it's again all, and it's not, oh, I'm just right here. This is all I am, right? That's not how it works. So while written by and for white women, I have seen a very similar, perhaps parallel process with women of color. And I'm seeing it more and more as, I think partially as I dig into this work more and more, and also I feel like there is a collective sort of awakening that's happening too, or maybe it's just that I hang out with mostly 35 to 45-year-olds, and that's just what I see, right? Could be all of the above. So when we're in this space of longing, right, of loneliness, of depression, of anxiety, of hysteria sort of feeling, and that hysteria is disconnection from body and mind, right? We just are in this total dissonance. When these symptoms show up, symptoms, I'm going to call them symptoms, when these signs, they're really signs, they are symptoms of a patriarchal culture, and they are signs that we are now becoming aware of it. When we get to that place, it's saying that we are ready to start to do this work to connect to ourselves. It's not work that can be pushed. It's not really work that 20-year-olds can typically do, although I have had a couple of young women in my various circles, and by young I mean under 30. Not that over 30 is old. I'm almost 45, so I don't want to give any sort of impression that, you know, once you're 30 you're over the hill, because I don't feel that way. But so I've had a cut, like literally two women who are under 30 who have participated in this work, and they have done amazing work. And because there's always exceptions to the rule, right? And as a general statement, just in emotional, human, and brain development, we typically aren't at a space where we can dig into this work until we dig into our 30s. And some women, it's not until we're in our 40s. And for other women, it's not until they're in their 50s. All of our paths are individual. All of our paths are different. We all have our own ways of being and doing in this world. So, the reason I shared that is we can't do this work until we're ready to do this work. This isn't work that can be forced. We can't wake up one morning and say, you know what? I think I'm going to start connecting to myself today. Usually, I mean, I guess we could, right? Usually there is some preamble to that. Usually that preamble shows up, like I said, as anxiety, as depression, as discontent, as dissonance, as a sort of feeling of hysteria, and everything is upsetting us all the time, and we can't really get to a logic space. All of that is part of our self, our inner core self, saying, hey, could you pay attention to me? Because you're living in a way that doesn't work for me. And apparently we need to take 30, 40, 50 years of not living in a way that works for us before our self, our body, our spirit, our core demands that we pay attention. We can ignore it, right? We don't have to do this work. Nobody has to do this work. This work of connecting to ourselves, of digging into those stories about how we don't measure up, about how we have harmed ourselves, how we have harmed others, how our culture doesn't like us very much. Like, digging into all that shit isn't fun. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It's incredibly uncomfortable. I'm so good at marketing, right? Oh, this work, it's awful. You don't want to do this work. But it's true. Like, I don't want there to be any sort of misguided idea that, oh, this is glamorous work. It's not. This work is hard. It is hard taking these looks at ourselves, connecting to our shadow pieces, really looking at our shame and connecting to it and connecting to the stories that are involved in it. Seeing the ways that we have bought into what our culture has taught us, not only about ourselves, but about other women, about all other women, right? That is a lot of work, which is why why this circle is 12 months long, because it's not something that we can do in a week. It's not something we can do in a month. I create space within the circle for us to stop and breathe and have some self-care and some nourishing time, because it's important to do that. We can't be constantly going, digging. And because there needs to be time for the work to settle into us, for us to go, oh, okay, this is where I'm at, right? To let it click, right? For it to work in our subconscious and unconscious, and then for us to have our aha moments. There needs to be space for that. So that's why this is 12 months long. And the truth is, it's not like at the end of 12 months, you're going to be totally connected to who you are. And because this is lifelong work, right? And at the end of 12 months, you will be deeply connected to who you are. So not totally and deeply. I don't know if we ever get to that totally place. Maybe some special beings do. I don't know. So that is about the self and about connecting to the self and about what this 12-month circle is about, connecting to the self and what that looks like, a little bit of what that looks like. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or drop me an email or connect to me, send me a message on my Facebook page, or like whatever feels good for you. And I'd love to have a conversation. I'm totally open to doing a phone or video conference for 20, 30 minutes. I'm totally open to emailing. And if you have any questions about, well, I don't really get this self thing, let's talk about it. I love to talk, as you can tell. Talk. So that's it for today. Sending you love. In a few days, you will get another video, and they'll just keep coming through the end of August. Okay. Sending you lots of love. Talk to you soon.